Hey guys, I'm Dave and welcome to the Trull Gallery. Today we're going to build a loft bed right here. A couple of my friends have built a tiny house. They did most of the work themselves, but they've asked me to come in and help out with the loft bed. It's going to be some construction grade materials, 2x6s, plywood, and a 4x4 leg, and bolted to the wall. It's not going to be a fancy 4-poster bed, but it's going to fit their needs and give them plenty of storage underneath. So with that said, let's see how we pull this one off. To start this build, I cut several 2x6s to length. First I square one end, and since I only trim off a small bit, I make sure the stapled on skew tag is as far away from my blade as possible. I can cut through them, and I have, I'd just rather not. As I mentioned, I start by trimming one end square. For the cross pieces, I flip the stock around, place 2 pieces of 2x scrap on the end, and measured for my distance, in this case 62 inches. Then I could cut the piece at that point. After squaring one end, I set the first board on top of the next, mark the end, and then I could cut it to the same length. I cut a total of 4 at this size. Just make sure to always reference off that first piece to minimize any discrepancies. The 2 long sides of the bed were also cut like this, but at 82 inches. I was told the studs were 16 inches on center, and this outlet box was on the left side of the stud. I set my laser on the center of the known stud, set one of the long 2x in place, and marked the location of that stud. Then I could work my way out to both ends, making a mark every 16 inches. The headboard 2x was set in position against the side 2x and marked in the same way. This time I used some visible screw heads in the drywall as a starting point. With the studs located, I transferred those marks along the outside of both 2x's with my speed square. I then marked a point 1.5 inches in from either edge along those lines for my fasteners. While the fasteners I'm using don't need pre-drilling, I find doing so makes controlling the screws easier. I pre-drilled each of the marks I had just made on both 2x's with a 3/16 inch bit to make mounting to the wall easier. Now that the mounting holes were located, I could lay out the locations for the 4 cross pieces on the bed. I drew the center point of each cross piece as well as the line showing me where the outer edges of the stock would fall. I think this makes assembly easier later. The outer 2 would be mounted flush to the ends, and the inner 2 would be equally spaced in between. Oh, and clamping the stock together just makes the layout quicker and less prone to error. One of the inner cross pieces had to be offset a bit, so I'd have clearance for the mounting holes I just drilled. I could have moved it over a bit more, but I still got the fasteners in later. The fasteners I'm using are 4.5 inch headlock screws, and they have a pronounced head. I didn't want that to interfere with the drywall or the skirting that my friends want to apply later, so to help bury the heads, I drilled a shallow countersink with a 3/4 inch Forstner bit at each of the locations I just laid out. I came back with that 3/16 inch bit and drilled a pilot hole for the fasteners using the center point of the Forstner bit left as my starting point. To begin the assembly, I started in one corner and clamped the pieces together with my Rockler clampet square. After verifying the top of the 2 pieces were even, I drove in the first 2 of those 4.5 inch screws. I assembled all 4 corners in the same way. Now I set in the 2 inner cross pieces and attached one end of each of those in place. I used my speed square to keep them perpendicular while driving the fasteners in. After the first screw was set, I readjusted the piece so it was square to the floor and drove the second fastener in. Before setting the other side of the inner pieces, I made sure that the frame was square by checking the diagonal measurements. I was out by nearly 1/2 inch, but a few taps with the hammer and the measurements matched. And then I can start one fastener on each board. Before driving them home, I checked for square again. I used my speed square to check for plumb, then set the screws. And then I could go back and add the last 2 fasteners, securing the frame together. It was still a bit out of square, but not so much that it will ever be noticed. The one leg for the build was cut next. I used a 4x4, and as before, I cut the bottom square. I marked the height of the leg at 53 3/8 of an inch. This would give me the 48-inch clearance under the bed frame, plus 5 3/8 for the 2x6 stock, leaving the leg just shy of the top of the frame. I cut that to length with my miter saw and brought it inside. I marked and pre-drilled my countersink holes to connect the leg like I had done before. I made sure to offset the 2 sets of holes so the 4 long screws wouldn't hit each other. Sadly, I forgot about the 2 screws that were already there. I repositioned 2 of the holes and can only hope that the skirting will hide my little whoops. Then I came back and pre-drilled it with the 3/16" bit. I marked a point on the wall 48 inches up from the floor, which was the clearance I was asked to provide. I set my laser at that height and transferred that line at several points along both walls in preparation for mounting the bed. I drove several screws into the pre-drilled holes so that their points were just shy of the face of the 2x and called for reinforcements.
I began 5 years ago.
The guys lifted the frame into place. We got it even with the marks on the walls, and I drove in enough fasteners to lock it in place. With the frame attached to the wall, we set the leg in place, added a few clamps, and adjusted the frame on the leg until it was level. Once we got the location just right, I screwed the frame to the leg. Then I could go back and drive in the rest of the fasteners. With the frame complete, it was time to prepare the deck. I marked the first sheet of 3/4 inch plywood at 82 inches and cut it to length with my shop-made saw guide. I needed another piece of ply to fill the gap on that platform. I set my Craig rip cut to 13 3/4 of an inch to rip down that second piece. Then I could use my saw guide to rip that strip down 82 inches. After marking the center lines of the frame pieces, I could fasten the plywood down. And while I know it'll never be seen, I laid the screwed locations out symmetrically because, well, OCD. I started with a few number 9 by 2 inch fasteners around the perimeter and then came back and screwed down the field. I gotta tell you, this thing didn't move at all while I was up there working. I'll be adding the plans for this bed to my website, and I'll add a link below once it's complete. This was a pretty quick and easy build. I maybe have 3 hours invested. And with the exception of lifting the frame in place, I did all the work myself. My friends are going to do some touch-up work. They're going to put some facing on this side and the footboard, and they wanted to do that themselves. And there is talk of doing some storage on the side, kind of like steps, drawers kind of a thing, and who knows, I might be back for that. Love to hear your thoughts on this video. Was there something I could have done easier, smarter, safer, more stable? Drop me in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, maybe give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, the sign's not there. Maybe hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you get notified each time we put out a new video. Not sure what's coming up next, but it should be interesting. So until then, have a great day, stay safe, and we'll see you soon. I'm going to take a little rest.